Hello, this is Mingo Chen. I'm professor of Management Information System at Smith School of Business Economics, CSU Channel Island. This is the second lecture on working in and with team. And teamwork is part of the leading function in the POLC framework. It has a lot to do with people, but there's also a process in terms of the development of group or team involved. And in this second lecture, we're going to discuss what is considered effective team and what are the barriers for effective teams, and also what kind of interdependency may exist for team member. And last not the least is how to run effective meeting, which happen a lot for teamwork. So effective teams has the so-called team cohesions, that is the bond that link the team member together through forces like loyalty, sense of purpose, etc. And a cohesive team acts together as a group, and a cohesive team has members who are happier and more self-confident, and a cohesive team usually is more productive. So we definitely want to build a more cohesive team. And here's just a few tips for doing so. You try to establish common objectives and involve member to define goals, and also clarify roles and responsibility for each team member. Build familiarity among team members through close proximity if possible, or try to use some really good virtual teamwork tool or collaboration tool such as Zoom, video conferencing, etc. And as a team lead, you would try to give frequent praise and validation for team members who are doing their job. Treat all members with dignity and respect, and celebrate difference among team members because diversity can be very helpful for team members to contribute their complementary skill set. Establish some common rituals. And here's a well-known and really nice team performance model. You would find some similarity of this with Tuckman's stage model for group development. In this case, it has 7 stages instead of 5. The first one is orientation. People who are in the team for the first time, they asking the question like, why am I here? And then you move to the trust building stage, and people try to know each other. It's like, who are you? Why you are here? Now I figure out why I'm here, but I need to figure out why you're here. So this is kind of the forming stage. There's a little bit of so-called stoning. The third is goal clarifications, like what are we doing? And certainly team has its goal, and individual may have their own individual goal, which hopefully are aligned with the team goal. And eventually we move to the commitment stage. People get along with each other. They know why they're here, and the goal has been clarified. They're asking the question like, how will we do it? How can we go about implementing it? So the team kind of has created in this creating stages. It's about 3 of them, and eventually they will move to the implementation stage or sustaining stage. The 5th stage is the implementation stage, and we need to figure out who does what, when, and where, which is a pretty easy to remember phrase. A lot of time, what a lot of team has done is they jump to this implementation stage right away without going through this orientation, trust building, goal clarification, and commitment stage. It does take time, but I think the time will be well spent in make sure that people gel together as an effective team. And if you have done this creating stage as well, then eventually you will have the so-called high performance team, which is the performance that just wowed everybody. And after they finish the job that the team has been tasked to do, then come to the last is the renewal stage. They need to ask like whether they need to continue or the team should be adjourned to team member would just go back to their department, functional area, or join another team to work on it. And if the team is maybe working so well, they may be assigned as a whole team to another new task. So this is a nice model. You will find more information in terms of description of it here, or go to the Grove Consultants International, which created this model in the first place. I've known this model for a long time, and it's a nice model that help you to think through different stages of a team which may go through, and if you want to build a very effective team. Why we want an effective team? Because you don't want something like this to happen, that you done your run of the relay race and then you hand it to someone else, but they drop the baton. And you want to make sure there's a proper handover even within the team member who are doing the work. So the barrier, one way to deal with issue related to building effective team is understand the barriers. For instance, knowing where to begin. This is kind of a goal clarification and also related to who need to do what, where, and when. If there's a dominant team members, they could be very productive and a very productive contributor to the team, but at the same time, they may ruin the team spirit. So you have to deal with the dominating team member properly. Some team member may be non-performing, and then you need to get them involved. There may be team conflicts that may occur, then that need to be managed. There are more barriers to effective team which we need to address. But one way to deal with some of the issue is go back to the basic, which is the definition of team. If I may repeat it, it's a small number of people with complementary skill that are committed to a common purpose, performance goal, and approach for which they hold themselves mutually accountable, which can address some of the issue here. Tips for addressing some of the issues raised earlier, like knowing where to begin. You may have a specific charter when you form the team or the project team, maybe even a contract to determine common value expectation, which is very important, the role people play in the team, like why I'm here, what role do I play, that role clarification, remember? Look at the team's vision, goals, and objective. When you have dominant member, you need to set up a proper group process, problem-solving process, group process, give everybody a chance to contribute, to speak up and also ask quiet members what they think, and certainly monitor your own behavior. And this is really related to something I will call facilitation skill. You need to have someone in your team, which can be the team leader or outside facilitator, to facilitate some of the work, teamwork. And we'll get back to this later in this lecture. If there's poor performance, you need to provide quick feedback to the member, help them out to see what's going on, and enforce the contract interpretation, but try to be fair. In teamwork, there's phenomena called social lofting. People seems it's difficult to kind of measure individual performance in a team, so people sometimes may not contribute as much as if they were measured individually. When there are conflicts, somebody needs to be in charge and then resolve the conflict as soon as possible. And otherwise, the team just will not work. So we do need to create a very cohesive team, just like the team performance model we discussed. However, effective teams, which has high cohesion, can be bad in some situation. One is so-called group thinks. You can actually search and find lots of information about group thinks. There's a book written about it, which means that a very talented group of people in the team can make stupid decisions because they all want to get along with each other, and they all want to conform to maybe the wish of the group leader. And we mentioned the term called social lofting. This goofing around, people may goofing around together instead of working in a very kind of a team that people get along. This may happen sometime. They're so happy with each other, they forgot about doing the work they are tasked to do. Another issue that may prevent group to work productively is related to the interdependency. In this case, could be the task dependency or the work product dependency. We'll kind of group them together. And one is that we call it poor interdependency. When team members may work independently and simply combine their work or effort at the end to create the team's output, that's called poor interdependency. Sometimes students would divide a group project into different sections. Each one of them write their own section and put it together last minute. That's kind of the poor interdependency. But that don't usually work. A lot of times, even you may have divided the work properly, you may still want to constantly check in with each other, make sure that there's some consistency in terms of the work that you will produce or put together. Sequential interdependency means that one person's output becomes another person's input, which means that some team members need to wait for the other person to finish their work. If you're the painters painting a house, then you may need to wait for the drywall guy to finish the drywall. And so any delay in terms of finishing the drywall may delay your painting job. That's the sequential interdependency. And sometimes this is not avoidable, but you need to clearly define this type of dependencies, and so that you will make sure that the bottleneck can be dealt with without holding up other tasks. Reciprocal interdependency, which means that people work together on deliverable for each phase of the group project. They work more closely in terms of synchronizing their work product on a continuous basis. This will be certainly a nice situation. However, this may result in a lot of meeting, which some can be counterproductive. So in terms of pooled interdependency or reciprocal interdependency, it's probably somewhere in between. The trick in getting this dependency taken care of is really need to go back to the concept of divide and conquer. In teamwork, eventually you need to divide the job into smaller module or pieces and then assign people to work on different pieces. However, those module and tasks depends on each other time-wise or based on the work product, which may rely on each other. And you need to understand the coupling and cohesion among those modules. If the modules are highly coupled, then you need the team to work more closely. If they're loosely coupled, which they're less dependent on each other, then the pool interdependency may be the situation. Then you can let individual work on their piece and put it together almost at the last minute. There's another dependency called outcome interdependency, which means where the reward that an individual receives depends on the performance of others, which means that you may get a group grade and the individual performance may not be taken into consideration that much. Okay. So let me come back again here in terms of when we divide the job into module or tasks, we hopefully will have kind of loosely coupled module, but within the module what needs to be done that's highly cohesive, and that will be the best situation. So do remember this, we want loosely coupled situation or dependency among module, but within the module, these things that need to be done within the module, you want it to be highly cohesive, which means they're closely related to each other. That's why you group those components within the module. So inside the module, you want cohesiveness, but among the module, you want hopefully the loosely coupled kind of a dependency, which means they're not dependent on each other that much. So as a team leader or an architect of the work or the task of for the team, you need to actually, somebody need to be responsible for the divide and conquer architecture work to divide things up, to get the loosely coupled but highly cohesive modules. So remember that, loosely coupled and highly cohesive. Next, and the last topic is effective meeting. And we all participate in meetings. We probably all hate meetings because a lot of meetings are not really very productive. I have attended a meeting that only the chair of the meeting speak, and in that case, it's really just announcing information instead of elicit information or jointly try to make decision. And that can be simply done by just sending out email. I guess we have a face-to-face meeting, just make sure everybody listen. So we have to actually first try to clarify the meeting objectives. Are we making a decision, or do we want to generate idea within the meeting? Or is really just getting a status report, or are we communicating with each other, or we're actually creating some kind of plans, or and so there are different kinds of meeting that you need to be aware of. And in this metrics, we kind of identify 4 type of meeting. There are more types, but this is kind of 4 typical meetings. Follow this link and you will read more about this, which is useful information. Some meetings are really just informing, explaining policy, procedures. So it's inform and explain. Some meeting is try to get people involved in discussing in terms of generating ideas and engaging people. So this could be certainly a useful use of meeting. And some meeting, we may be entering into a situation, we may be evaluating the ideas that we may have generated. Or if you don't, or sometimes if we're talking about brainstorming, then you're actually develop ideas in the first place, but then evaluate them. Deciding and concluding, which means that you're making the final decisions in that decision-making process. We'll talk about decision-making in a unit later on. So to some extent, you may start with informing, explaining, and then you may engage people in terms of brainstorming and then further discussion, and eventually come back to make some final decisions. So the meeting may you may have a sequence of meetings which all related to a project, but you may have different type of meeting which may be connected to each other. This is from the Grove Consulting International. They're really good in terms of use graphical notation to facilitate meeting. This is what they have identified in terms of what constitutes a good meeting. You want to have some clearly identify objective or outcome. Outcome certainly you may consider that's the outcome of the meeting, but outcome is what's expected outcome, which could be a plan, a decisions. And also identify the role of the participant who participate in the meeting, who should be in the meeting. And you need to, it's very important you have meeting agenda, which is the process of the meeting. And also a set of rules which govern the meeting. And you may have a facilitator or a chair of the meeting managing the process, enforcing the role and make sure people play their role and working together in reaching or generating the outcome and reaching the objective of the meeting. So to run a successful meeting, there's a skill called facilitation. I personally think that's an important skill that all business students should have. And here's the definition. Facilitation is the art of leading people through processes towards agree on the objective in a manner that encourage participation, ownership, productivity, from all who involve in the process. The process here is really, in terms of a meeting, is really agenda. You need to design the agenda, which is a process. The agree upon outcome is in the previous diagram, is really this outcome objective here. And the facilitator who play the facilitation's role will encourage participation and ownership and productivity. So facilitator who managed the meeting, by the way, facilitator could be the team leader or the manager, and for some important meeting, we have an outside professional facilitator to come and help us to facilitate. Facilitator will work to help achieve the group's desired outcome and not the facilitator's own desirable outcome. And certainly facilitator want the meeting to be successful. Facilitators' leadership would be focusing on the process suggestion. They manage the process, and make sure we follow agenda. And particularly the outside facilitator, you're usually staying away from the content-related positions or argument. Facilitator would mediate any disagreements or conflict over how to proceed in a consensus-based manner. So to run the effective meetings, which is critical for effective teamwork, you need to prepare for the meeting, make sure the meeting is needed, make sure you come up with the agenda by consulting people involved, and then a lot of time actually we will send email to all the participants and say anything you want to put it on the agenda. If it's a major decision-making process, then you need to carefully thinking about steps that you are taking in terms of generating idea, organizing idea, and evaluate ideas in order to make the final decision. And you should put that as part of your agendas, different agenda item, and together they can help you to make a decision jointly with the group member. And send a reminder to all participants. And manage the meeting. That's facilitator's job or meeting chair's job. And start and end, make sure start and end on time. So sometimes you have to stop people who talk on and on to make sure you can end on time. And make sure address all the items on the agenda. And also at the end, if you have time, you always say any last minute things that people want to discuss if time allowed. And manage the group dynamic, make sure there's full participation. Create the kind of ownership that you would like to have. And at the end of each meeting agenda or the end of the meeting, you want to summarize what has been discussed and also come up with the action item. If there are anything that may take too long to resolve, you may create something we sometimes call parking lot, which means you would not table the issue, you would write down the issue and say this issue is important, but it takes a long time to resolve it at this meeting. So we will maybe create a task force to address this issue, and then in the next meeting, we'll have the task force report back to the group. And that's how you can handle some of the tricky issue which may take forever to resolve. After the meeting, it's very important that you follow up on those action items. And it is now very popular in a lot of organizations to conduct a meeting with participants standing, and that definitely was cut the meeting relatively short, but make sure everybody's paying attention. This is a popular approach in something we call it Scrum in software development. There's a Scrum methodology that they have the daily meeting that people will go through what they have done yesterday, what they're planning to do. Sometimes they even show what they have done in terms of prototype. But they're all standing in that morning meeting. And here's another great book that I will recommend if you're interested in how to run a meeting successfully. The title is called Mining Group Goal. I believe it's written by somebody who used to work at Xerox, and which the approach here is that the author believed that a manager needs to be a good facilitator who will manage meeting with some facilitation skill. So let's look at what's involved. He divided the meeting into starting up, moving out, and wrapping up. This is certainly for during the meeting. Define the session purpose and desirable outcome, and maybe have some warm-up exercise, particularly when team member may not be familiar with each other. Try to initiate an open and collaborative climate when you are performing. Maintain an open and collaborative environment, and manage disrupted behavior, manage the difference among team member, and make a concluding remark along the way in each of the agenda item. For instance, you say, okay, we come up with like 10 really great ideas in the last brainstorming session. Now let's move to the next stage and evaluate these ideas. Okay, that's kind of the conclude along the way, what that means. Wrapping up, tied up loose end at the end of the session. Check session outcome against the desired outcome that you may have defined at the beginning. And tell the group that what will be coming next. So that's it. We conclude the discussion of teamwork. Either you're a member of a team, or team leader, or your higher level manager need to manage the team underneath you. Teamwork is very important. In modern society, a lot of things gets done by teams. So hopefully our discussion here, such as how to run effective meetings, the team formation process, or the stage model of group development, as well as the facilitation skill, can benefit you in terms of working in team. Thank you. Bye-bye.